And then there was music. Welcome, this is the Something Ventured podcast. I am Kent Lindstrom. I am your host. Our guest today, Charlie Recksieck. Today and next time, Charlie is an entrepreneur. He's an engineer. He has his own business. And he's also a musician. And he's a great musician. And he has a band. And we are going to talk music. We are going to talk about the effects that technology has had on music throughout the ages. We got into this topic. We were like, wait a minute. This goes back to the things that happened in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s and the 40s. It didn't make it back to the 1800s, but there were things happening in music then as music transitioned because of technology from being a live performance concept to being something that did not need to be live performance. As I was preparing for this podcast, so with the music, we're going to try a couple things over the next few podcasts, find something that feels right for the program here. And it's just going to be as professional as the day is long. A couple story I was thinking about that we didn't cover with respect to music that you may not know, a bit of the history of Silicon Valley, and it's around the concept of a kind of BitTorrent or music sharing. In the late 90s, something emerged, founded by Sean Parker and Sean Fanning, called Napster. And Napster basically was a peer-to-peer file sharing network that people used largely to share music. And it exploded, started using huge amounts of bandwidth on the internet. And Sean Fanning, a relatively young guy at the time, made one of these sort of tragic mistakes that you can make in starting a company that can kill your company. The music industry is notoriously litigious. It's a bunch of lawyers. Musicians and lawyers. So Napster comes along. It's starting to become a big thing. A company called Hummer Winblad, that's an investment capital firm, invests in them. And Sean Fanning brings in his uncle to run the thing. Lesson number one in startups: your uncle's probably not the best candidate for the job. In fact, your relatives are probably not the best candidate for any job. Anyway, the music industry proceeded to sue them and put Napster out of business. They even sued that company, Hummer Winblad. The correct chess move at that point was probably something like bringing in the most important and powerful person in the music industry, whoever that was, putting them in charge of it and having them negotiate deals with all the record companies, which Apple famously later did. In a tangent, you're seeing something similar to this happening in Silicon Valley now, where as companies get big, they hire the people in power to help them succeed. For example, Uber, I believe, hired David Plouffe, who was the guy who ran Barack Obama's campaign. Uber, the ride-sharing company, has huge regulatory issues they're going to have to face, and so they hired basically the most powerful person in that area, David Plouffe, a guy who's extremely well connected in Washington. They did not hire the CEO's uncle. Anyway, we will kick it off here. Our guest today, Charlie Recksieck. We're talking music. This is the Something Ventured podcast. All right, welcome. This is the Something Ventured podcast. I'm Kent Lindstrom. I'm your host. My guest today, Charlie Recksieck. How are you doing?
Not bad. Happy to be here.
It's great to have you here. In this podcast, I explore the reality behind the Silicon Valley headlines as I sit down with the people who are shaping the way we view the world online and beyond. And you're not really from Silicon Valley.
No, I'm not.
But Charlie is both an engineer, owner of his own engineering company. Is that right?
Yep.
And also a musician.
Exactly. So I have two jobs, which...
And has a band.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought we would spend a podcast talking about technology and music.
I'll let you know everything I know, which this could be a 10-minute podcast.
That's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's never happened. Actually, the joke in Silicon Valley is there's like just infinite music apps in Silicon Valley. Yeah. And the reason, of course, is that everybody who's building apps is like 25 years old.
Right.
And so... like they'll build music app 4,722 before they build the first like diabetes management
exactly.
app because they're all young.
Friends that I know have been developing apps, these serious, kind of high-minded apps, and then the only one that hit was the one that you turn the phone sideways and it looks like a beer pouring. It's just
oh, that's cool. I
got good stuff. $2.99.
I've got to download that.
Well, I don't know how many apps have actually changed anything in music though, too. Like, what apps have really
Shazam.
struck? Yeah,
Kinda.
For sure, and that has changed. Like, I don't longer have to ask a human what's actually playing. I'm just gonna.
Yeah, Shazam Shazam, although Shazam is kind of a really limited use case because it's for when you don't know the song, but it's playing on not some device that has the song read out for you.
And it happens to me in stores.
Like in a bar. Yeah, I think I talked to somebody who, I've talked to people at Shazam, and Soundhound is the other one.
Yep.
Apparently an alarming number of, whatever you call it, like tagging of the songs happens in cars.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's about right.
So add that to like when somebody's cutting you off in traffic and they're texting and doing that. They're also trying to figure out, fumble for their phone before the song disappears.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully they're not dancing at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. So what's your I was looking it up. What's your band name?
The Big Fellas. Yep.
What? That's the name?
Yeah, that's it.
I thought it was something else.
No, it should be. There's another one that I'm starting called Leaders in the Clubhouse
that's
right now.
That's the one I was thinking about.
Okay, good. Yeah, so they're... We're a well-kept secret. We're releasing in a couple of months in May.
Releasing what?
I guess a CD, technically.
So what do you say?
So I keep saying
album?
record. I'm old enough I keep saying record. Yeah. But it's actually gotten back to that. I think technically you would say it's an album or a collection.
You say an album, right?
You should say an album.
But
I do say record.
And I think of an album as something that you open up. Like that, there's two sides of it, and you open it up.
The best album had like what would be a two-sleeve thing, and you kind of open it up, and it's a picture of a spaceship. That shows how old it was all ELO and Boston. And stuff.
There was a Led Zeppelin one that like had the water thing.
Yeah,
where you put the water on it and the white turns colors.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
It's a good gimmick. Yeah,
I thought that was about as far as music could go. I thought that was
we all
the
did.
most advanced thing in music.
I used to think Led Zeppelin was so hard, and then now like you just see them at restaurants, and 70-year-olds are listening to Led Zeppelin. Like, something really changed.
Yeah, I took like guitar lessons for about 5 minutes, and my guitar teacher was like, "I'm going to show you how to play this one Led Zeppelin song," and he's like, "Okay, the first string you tune up here, and the second string you tune down there, the third string you tune here." I was like, "Are you kidding?" Like, it was the most complicated thing.
That's a real rough start. Yeah.
I'm sure as soon as you played, I'm sure once you're in that tuning, it was like the easiest thing in the world to play. I was like, this is way too advanced for me.
Yeah, basically, you just play for kids starting out. You just play an electric guitar, just turn it up and strum it. Like you sound like $1 million if you just play through an amp.
That's true. I really enjoyed it too. Yeah. In fact, I played video games for about 10 hours. Like I started down that path and I played one. I was like, why doesn't everybody who plays video games for like hundreds of hours learn guitar?
Well, especially the ones who play Guitar Hero. You're learning like these kids like master Guitar Hero for 100 hours. Like, and I'm old man cranky pants. Just learn the guitar. Like it's ridiculous.
You will be like James Taylor. Like you will
kill it. Yeah,
this is unbelievable. So what was the path like? How did you end up in a band? Like how does this happen for a?
Well, I was already working in software. I had some jobs, but. Basically, I've listened to music like a crazy amount in my life. I think there were points where I was listening, I don't know, I sleep with music on, sleep with the TV on. Usually like reading, TV, and music happening in some combination of two or maybe three all at the same time.
Right.
And so I just listened to a crazy volume of music. And at some point, I was kind of listening to things, and then, when you haven't heard something new or something that's very exciting for you, I kept asking I couldn't find anything new, and I was getting a little upset that bands were not pleasing me at the moment.
Yeah.
And I just said, maybe I could do this.
Yeah,
So,
right.
And I'd always played growing up, but never been in bands. But it was just a matter of personal dissatisfaction, saying, let's just see if I could do it.
And so, what do you like? Paul Allen, the Microsoft co-founder, is in a band, and he says it's completely different from playing by yourself. Like they're just. Well, he's a musician. But.
Right. No, that's totally true. Especially, there's drummers. I mean, if you're a drummer, what can you do by playing with yourself? Like,
right.
Ringo Starr's never played the drums without being in a band. A lot of drummers won't even touch it that way.
Yeah.
And Eric Clapton says he hates playing by himself. But
now, do you do drummer jokes? Like how many people in your band, like 3 musicians and a drummer?
What do you call somebody who likes to hang out with musicians? A drummer. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it would be a better joke if actually everybody else knew how to read music, but everybody I play with doesn't even know what they're doing anyways.
Right.
It is definitely playing different in a band. The weirdest thing is playing live, playing solo. If you do perform live, it's a whole situation. Because if you're band, you're going through it together.
Yeah.
And if you're solo, there's nobody else to say, look, share the experience with and say, isn't this ridiculous? But playing in a band, Also, the biggest difference is recording and playing live. They're two different things. It's like acting on the stage and acting for TV. Yeah.
And what do you like better?
I actually like going out because, like, I work in software at home. So, like, if it wasn't for playing out, I'd probably have no social life. I'd probably be a shut-in at this point. And,
you're watching TV all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Getting groceries delivered all the time. I like it, but what I really set out to do, I don't know. Everybody's different. I like to write songs and just see what you come up with. So, in that sense, I kind of like working in the studio more and trying to get better at doing it at home. But I don't know. It's apple and oranges.
You were the Billy Joel of San Diego.
Yes, yeah. I remember you could do a little Captain Jack. I remember that was
the one thing I learned. I never stuck with it. So Billy Joel's coming to San Francisco.
Oh, that's nice.
September 8th.
He just he did an interesting thing. He just kind of hung up songwriting. He says, "I'm just playing," which is kind of nice. I kind of like when somebody's kind of over the hill, like Robert Plant. Stop writing new songs. Just just let it go. And he just said, "I'm written out." That's
because the problem is you go to his show and then hey, something off the new album.
Right, exactly.
Great, time to get a beer.
It's bathroom break time.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. But he's doing some weird thing at Madison Square Garden, right? Where do you know about this? Where he's like they call him artist in residence at the Madison Square Garden.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so he plays like 4 shows a year at Madison Square Garden.
That's good.
And sells it out. Right? Like it's like being the Dropkick Murphys and like playing in Boston all the time.
Right, exactly. It's good. Why travel? Yeah, it's like being Britney Spears. Just play Vegas, let everybody come to you. Stop touring.
Yeah, don't stress yourself.
Yeah.
So he's coming here, although somebody was telling me that he's like old enough that he's got like a backup singer guy who kind of carries some of the higher register, tougher stuff.
I was just on the road today and just kind of singing along. There was some Billy Joel song, and it was just high. And like I'm sure he wrote it when he was 28 or 30, and thought like, I'll only be doing this for a couple more years.
Yeah.
Like these guys singing songs like that high. If you ever thought. Yeah. If they ever thought they'd be singing at 50, they'd be all these Frank Sinatra. The summer went, they'd be a lot lower.
He's pretty good, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I was listening to. I'd never really listened to like his piano playing. And there's this YouTube video of this. He's at Vanderbilt University or something. And this kid, I don't know what he's doing. It's like some class. There's like 400 people in an auditorium. And he's got a piano and he's talking. And some kid like raises his hand. And he's like, "Can I play with you?" And everyone in the audience is like, "Whoa, dude!" Like whatever. And Billy Joel's like, "Okay." So the kid comes up and starts playing Piano Man. New York State of Mind.
Okay, yeah.
And is fabulous. Like, just fabulous. And I didn't realize, like, toward the end of New York State of Mind, there's parts where the piano goes, and he kind of stops singing, and there's these sort of arpeggios and stuff in there. It's pretty impressive.
That's pretty nice. I don't think he could pull that. He should quit while he's ahead. He's 1 for 1 before.
Yeah, exactly. And then afterwards, Billy Joel goes and clearly asks his name, because he didn't remember the kid's name before he realized the kid was a great piano player.
Right.
He's like, that's Bob Simon. Like, don't forget about it.
Right.
So.
Well, that's a good plug.
Yeah. So, technology and music. This seems to be one of the areas that technology has whipsawed the most. But as I was kind of preparing for this and thinking about it, like thinking back to Napster.
Right.
It's like, holy shit, before Napster, the stuff that's gone on, and I think we're old enough. We're not that old.
Yeah.
But old enough to have been through so many recording industry things. Like, I remember records.
For sure.
I remember records you could slow that had like 33 and 78 on the turntable.
And then the singles were the 45s. Yeah,
right, the 45s. There were tapes.
Yep.
8-track
tapes. 8 tracks, yeah, exactly.
Which I realized got put into like as an option for Ford cars in 1966.
We had a Pontiac when I was growing up. That was a big deal for 8 tracks. Yeah, and there was a funny little you could have some rock ones, but it'd all be like kind of Asia or Aldo Nova or Helen Reddy. It was a nice I
think Peter Frampton might have had like a 8-track of something.
I'm sure. Then they would cut off the song in the middle. It would be the end. They'd have to be balanced. It'd have to be the same length each direction.
What was that technology? Do you even know?
Well, it was just a tape being folded over. And so it had to be the same length because I had to play it this way. It had to be that long. Then then it'll flip over, and you're playing. There's actually 2 sides of tape. There's 2 songs on each side, and then there's 2 songs on the other side. It was crazy. I do have an 8-track player now, and I went back and found one on eBay, and I've been trying to find 8-tracks. So I found this place called Kate's Track Shack in Houston. Yeah. And you send them $10, and they'll send you eight tracks for, but a grab bag. I don't choose what they are, so it's like Christmas, and they come all the time. I love them.
Yeah.
But people talk about the technology. Everybody's kind of a purist now. A lot of people still buy record albums because they like the soft. Oh, I like the warm warm tone of this.
Is that a thing? Is that true?
personally, this maybe is a lot of other musicians say, yeah, you got to have it. I don't care at all. And like we listened on terrible speakers. When we were growing up in the 70s, we had horrible speakers. Like when I put on, let's say a Linda Ronstadt 8-track from the 70s, that's how we heard it on crappy speakers. I actually have more memories listening to things on an 8-track now that because it just got this crummy sound. I think the digital sound stuff is just totally fine. And people complain about low compression MP3s.
Yeah.
Well, you're fine.
A couple weird things. Like one is that I think back then you wrote songs to work that way. Like you kind of went, well, people are going to listen to it on a crappy AM radio.
Totally.
So your subtle new pornographer nuance crap isn't going to work.
No,
you
nothing.
Need like a drum
exactly. You knew it was just weird. Every once in a while, like somebody's dad would have like some expensive hi-fi set and be super, crazy about his sound.
John Coltrane.
Yeah, you just sit there in this chair and you got to listen to this, man. Listen to that drum. But everybody else, we had crappy speakers, and I think that was, you're right, everybody was able to kind of record for that. Everybody kind of, there's so many changes, but when stereo came in, like the Beatles and the Who, like they would kind of overdo it on every side. So they'd be completely separated. I was in a guy's, I don't know, friend's Omni beat-up car, and we were driving up to San Francisco from L.A., and he had just one speaker, and it was Beatles' Yellow Submarine, and all you heard was... Submarine.
Well, that was the era too, where you sort of like you put the headphones on and it like would go from one side to the other.
Yeah, they'd get really tricked. They'd whip around and you get a little bit of a whoa, this is blowing my mind.
Crazy. The funny thing is we've come from that to like a thing where people listen on kind of shitty headphones now.
Well, it's a real variety. That's the thing. Like when I'm in the studio, every studio I've been in has these killer speakers. Listening, you're mixing for there, and then things will just get lost. It's like. Well, to put it in Silicon Valley terms, like when you're developing a web page, it's not just on internet. Now it's on phones, and guys do a shitty job of, developing. Even major companies have their sites, and then you look on a mobile device, and it just falls apart. You can't really see things. Same things. You've got to listen to you've got to develop for everything. You've got to record now for everything. You've got to listen to it in a studio on crummy speakers. You got to drive around your car. You got to listen to it on bad headphones.
Well, I think that's a bit more what they were doing back in the day. Is I think the Rick Rubin of his day was like, all right, I'm going to play this on turn off the bass, all treble, and see if it sounds good on your little like AM radio.
Yeah, little transistor radios. Yeah, and all those things were, so many of these things were like live recorded, like in the room too. They just you'd be shocked at all these old recordings. They're just like a microphone placed the right spot in the middle of a room.
Yeah, and by the time you got to by the time Napster is kind of where I started. Then looking back, I'm like, there was a whole thing where the record industry was going nuts about. It's so cute now, but cassette tapes.
Oh, totally.
People were recording.
That was the first thing people could record themselves. Yeah.
Which is just it was so hard to do. I mean, if you were doing that, you would almost deserve to take it.
Totally. And the quality of what you were doing on those early cassette tapes was really rotten. Yeah. I mean, this happened way back. I mean, all these changes go even further back. Like, the LP phonograph was kind of the longest. That was kind of the longest-standing champion of a technology for a while. But before that, you had the Edison, the wax cylinders.
Yeah, right.
And these things just kind of went haywire. There was a lot of changes, the first 4 or 5 years. It was kind of the Wild West, and patents were a disaster. And nobody all these, I don't know, just phonograph record makers were the music labels at the time. And we had the record for a while, and then in the 70s we had really rapid fire. We had the cassette, and that was the game changer. But then the 8-track gets made fun of for being this outdated technology. The 8-track was around for as long as the cassette was, just about.
Yeah.
It started a little earlier, and it didn't quite make it as long.
Yeah, I think my sister went through this sort of interregnum where she bought a car that had an 8-track, and nobody wanted 8-tracks.
Yeah.
Or nobody had an 8-track anymore, so she just got donated infinite amounts of 8-track.
For sure.
It was amazing.
Before records kind of came back, I still had a record player. Yeah, you could just clean up for 23-cent record sales and just get a ton of them.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and the records had 3 different speeds. Did anything ever? I think we had some 78s when I was a kid.
78s were really older. That was you'd find Victimone or something.
And then wasn't there a 12 or something? Wasn't there something below?
I don't think there was any. The slowest speed that I would see on by the time we were around a regular record player was 33 and a half. 78s were a little older, and then
there was
40,
a 12 or something.
I think it might have been the specialty thing. I can't remember that one at all. But it's crazy. But and then there's digital audio tape. DATs were around for about 15 minutes.
That was a big scare for the record. Like,
Yeah, for
if you look back, they were completely panicked by that.
Yep.
Because they're like, now everybody's going to tape everything.
Yep. But then
yeah.
around the same time Napster happened, that's about the same time you could kind of get CD recorders too. Like you could burn them yourself.
Right,
on
and then and then
a little bit before. But.
And then the record industry had a windfall in the '80s when CDs came out.
Right,
and everybody rebought their entire album. Like everybody's bought Dark Side of the Moon twice.
And maybe at least more. Yeah, at least twice. Yeah, I've bought. At least in my case too. When I first started doing, when Napster and all this was happening. I thought it kind of legitimized me. I've spent so much money on these records. Yeah. Okay, screw it. I'll take this because I've bought, I don't know. I've bought Frank Sinatra's Summer, My Way 5 times. So I can go steal 4 other records now.
Yeah.
That's not the way it should work, but
that's not legal actually.
No, it's not.
Actually written
exactly.
into the
It's kind of quasi legal, but everybody makes their kind of rationalizations.
Yeah.
There's this great. There's 2 artists I've done this to when I first was downloading. It was Chuck Prophet and Ed Harcourt. Really loved their songs. Got a ton of them. And I kind of figured, okay, I've taken enough from him. And I figured, the record companies are so corrupt, they won't get their money. So I found both of their management companies, and I just sent $10 cash with a note to their companies. So I felt that evened something out. I hope they got it.
That's interesting. I was talking to somebody a few days ago who works at one of the big remaining labels, and they make a ton of money. And so what he said was kind of interesting. He said that the big thing the record labels screwed up, that what used to happen is that people would, buying a record would be their treat. It was like $15 or $10, and they get their paycheck and they'd buy it.
Right.
And they'd spend like $600 a year on records. And now, but that was like 15% of people actually cared enough about music to want to pay.
Right.
Those people now go get Rhapsody or Spotify, but for some reason the record industry was okay with like $10 a month. So they're getting kind of all the music they want, but for some reason they just chose $10 a month, so they're getting $120.
I don't know how long it took to arrive at that amount, though. I don't know how they set that point.
Well, what they said is, Steve Jobs came out with the iPod, and he set the song prices at 99 cents, which I think everyone was like, well, that sounds right, because if there's 10 or 12 songs on an album, that's a $15 album. Now, they didn't realize that people would only buy one song.
Correct.
It wouldn't. But so now people are paying $2 when they used to buy an album for whatever the hell an album was,
right, exactly.
$15. Now, of course, you weren't also distributing the album and having inventory sitting in record stores and all that kind of stuff. So that's it. So his point was like, there's only a small portion of people who actually care enough to pay for music, and that those people who are paying are now paying like a fifth of what they would have paid previously.
Totally,
like before all this kind of happened.
But then there's still just a larger pool of people paying. For music, period. Yeah. So that's the money is about relative the same. It's just going to kind of stranger in smaller places. They say that I still don't know if this is true. I've read the idea that illegal downloads still, whether they existed or not, there would still be the same amount of legal downloads. That it's almost just extra. It's extra downloading.
I've heard that too. Does that sound right?
It doesn't feel right, but I just because it's been oft repeated, I don't necessarily believe it. But I think I could kind of believe that the people that are downloading, when you look at somebody's collection now, they got 20,000 songs on their computer. Yeah, those people tended not to have 2,000 record albums sitting around at the same time.
I guess that's true, and I guess you do get that sort of kind of people make their own moral judgment where they're like, I feel like I've spent a lot of money on records.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I've got a lot of records and I've spent a lot of money, and I feel like I kind of deserve, a little bit of music here.
Yeah, and the trope that the record companies are so evil, like all these middlemen, they are at the point they were the people bringing you the music. It's like,
well, and it's a weird. So we'll talk about Napster, and we'll get to why I think the music industry is weird. Which is, by the way, Modern Jackass. Have you heard a podcast?
Yes.
The total Modern Jackass. What I think about the music industry.
Everything. The internet, being able to look up facts and call me on what the things that I'm saying is just ruined. I just don't speak anymore.
It's true.
It's gotten rid of all my BS.
Did you? Saturday Night Live has not been funny at all this year, in my opinion. But there was something I thought was funny with. Where they had the troll under the bridge.
Yep.
And the troll asked people 3 questions to pass. He's like, it's really not that fun anymore because they just Google all the answers and they get it. It's kind of like that.
But you could, I don't know, I've got a friend that was teaching computer science, and he was talking about, so these are all 19-year-olds, and he's telling them about the days before you could look something up, and they just laughed and they just thought it was so funny. And like, yeah, we used to bullshit each other all the time. That's
And now like you don't realize how often you were wrong. Because now I'll be like, no, for sure. That came out in 1984 because I remember this, I remember that.
But now I've gone through the other tunnel. Sometimes I don't even bother looking things up. No, like I could look it up. Like that really is a test of how little I absolutely care about something.
You don't care. Yeah, I'm there. I don't care either. Yeah, so Napster comes along. Napster is the first. It's peer-to-peer file sharing. Sean Parker and Sean Fanning. Right. Unlimited file share. It gets hugely popular. And I think they make this kind of critical mistake. I was talking to this record industry guy about this too, where he brings in his uncle. Like, what they should have done is brought in whoever the most powerful guy in the record industry was to be their CEO.
Yeah.
His uncle to sue the music industry, or to get sideways legally with the music industry. My understanding of the music industry is there's a bunch of like musicians and a bunch of lawyers, like of all the industries that you maybe don't want to like, who are professional. Like, sue you over copyright issues. Those are the guys.
Oh, that's why they're stronger. Yeah, you look at like royalties like that songwriters make. Like out of a TV show, like all the royalty, like if you show an old repeat of something like that, all this money's going to whoever composed the background music. It's none that's going to the like the other entertainment industries are just not have been so poorly defended by lawyers, except for music.
Is that how that works?
There's a
TV
ton.
Shows?
So much.
Because you see WKRP in Cincinnati now.
Yeah. Oh, you can't like
they don't have the rights to
anything. Totally. So they have this weird filler music or just cut it out. Or
what's that like? Did somebody screw up back?
No, because it was about 30 years ago that they kind of strengthened the law. So what you owed back royalties on something, but at the time they didn't worry about putting things in. Like there's whole shows that you just haven't seen anymore, like SCTV, because they just use the music, and now you just can't watch it.
Because they were playing. Well, when you watch an SNL rerun, it's weird. The music's not in it,
right?
Which I don't really understand.
Yeah,
but it's not in it. And WKRP is a funny one because music was so much of what that show.
Yeah, it was on in the background. I don't know how to show any of it without.
Or they play like Imagine by John Lennon or something because it was about that in the show.
Yep.
Like, and I guess they just didn't have the rights, so you watch it now. And it is very funny.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like,
they're talking about Imagine, and then here's some sound alike.
Yeah, some crazy thing. Yeah. So is that how? Like, what is the? Is there like a music fantasy there where you come up with like 3 notes or the Law and Order chords and you're a billionaire? Like
there is a lot. Yeah, there are there are some things like that you just. Like even something like the People's Court theme or something, that's it. Those guys are composers. Like the Law and Order theme is called a theme song, like anything else.
And so what happens? Like some guy does it and sells.
He does it. He sold it. Probably kept 50% of the rights since it was work for hire. Unless I don't know about that particular case. Yeah. You can be a work for hire, and then they get all of it.
Yeah.
But they get all of the publisher. So there's a 50-50 share, the artist, the songwriter, and the publisher.
Yeah.
So usually if you're just nobody like me, you own your own publishing, so you get all 100%.
Yeah.
But then let's say NBC probably became the publisher share, but the original composer still gets his 50% share from his performance, PRO, performance royalty organization. And it's just money in the bank. There's people just live off this stuff. There was a guy who used to be the golf marshal at this golf course in L.A., Penmar in Venice. And the guy, retired, the ambassador, the guy who sits out there in his cart that doesn't do anything and enforce any rules. And he retired. He wrote some of the lyrics to Monster Mash, and that's all he did. That was it.
That's great.
I'm dying to know which ones.
Yeah.
It was a smash, and that's it.
Was that him?
Yeah.
He was the smash guy. Yeah. He's like smash and bash.
Yeah, exactly.
Those rhyme.
Yeah, bingo.
That's all.
Okay, I'm going home. I'm done.
It's funny. I do these podcasts and like the Silicon Valley stuff, and then I like do anything related to Hollywood. And people are like, oh, that was great. Like people still
more Hollywood.
Give us more Hollywood. Like people getting rich, on TV and like all that.
It is crazy. Well, actually, Mike, I know he's who are you talking to about Hollywood? It happens the same thing. You can tell somebody Hollywood is. Your lecture could be Hollywood is gross. I know he's spoken at UCLA, and then reality TV is awful. It's just behind the curtain and. These awful stories. And at the end, like, people are like, how do I get a job? Like, it's just like everybody wants it.
People here are like, oh, yeah, there's writers for reality. That was a big news to everybody. There's writers for reality TV shows, but it's all real. It's like,
it's similar. Like, some people, similarly, like, I think we're old enough where we still maybe look down on reality TV.
Yeah.
And, younger people are so used to it. Same thing, I think, with a musician. If in the old days you wanted to be an artist, you want to write your songs and get them out there. there's a whole crop of people that I see at all these kind of songwriter conventions. Like, I just want to get something on film and TV because that's really the only way to make money.
Yeah.
But it's not even like, oh, I want my song about that I wrote about my girlfriend. It's like they just want a like they just want some little bleep, blop, blop, at the end of Real Housewives or something like that.
Well, that's the crazy thing about Hollywood, and it's true in Silicon Valley too. You think there's like 3 jobs. There's like actors and directors and like something else, right?
For sure.
There's like a billion jobs, right? There's the guy who makes the fabric for the thing, and the guy. I mean, there's just all these little jobs. And there's like, I'm the guy who goes out and gets sounds of things.
Yeah, I'm a rabbit wrangler.
Yeah,
that's
right. Like, and there's a lot of that work in Hollywood. I think it's like that. Like there's, music. There's
music still has a ton of that. I mean, there's song pluggers. Like if you are a band and you're a musician, there's really 4 ways to make money. You've got, you can sell your records, live performance, royalties for film and TV, and merchandise. And that's really it. Yeah. Over time, those have always been there.
And there's no money in the records anymore. Isn't that
not
the problem?
Much? Yeah. So all the money's shifted. You're expected to, touring's okay, but like touring's getting really brutal, and just live performance is just terrible.
Why isn't live performance great? What's the problem? Like I go, there's 1,000 people.
I guess these rules all applied. You could almost say there's about 3 tiers. Like there's superstars. Yeah. So like whatever Taylor Swift's decision to pull from iTunes and Radiohead releasing album for free, that applies only to bands at that level.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of people that a lot of us have heard of. Yeah. And then the third group is like people that you haven't heard of. So that one's just brutal. Everybody's playing for free, so there's no money. Like where it used to be, any bar would just pay you whatever, $500 or $200 to play in a night. So many people want to play. There's so many spots. People have all these aspirations that there's another band will play it for 50 or for 0. Right. And so live performance in that sense is dead. And then I think for touring bands are kind of at the local good club, but it's not Madonna or anything. Yeah. But let's say, I don't know, Jill Solbuhl or somebody, I don't know, who knows, like is coming to your town. Yeah. Just not as many people are coming. And then that used to have to be their whole piece of their pie. Now it's still just a smaller piece. Yeah. It used to be the part that's grown, merch is about the same. You're always counted on to merch, and that's the only thing you controlled.
Yeah, this is like the T-shirts and all the T-shirts.
Exactly. Mugs. I don't know what I didn't even know Yeah, we were just talking before. I never bought merch as a kid. Like I
don't even know who does buy. Like it's not even that. Like you don't really see people wearing it. No. Except, I mean, the whole concert thing where you go to like a show and you need like a cool. You need a T-shirt of a band that people at that show would think is cool from like 20 years ago. Right. Like you go to a Social Distortion show, you need like a Cramp shirt from 19 whatever.
But now you could just go order those up. You print them up if you want. But I had a friend in merch, and that like up to 10 years ago, he was still here. It was at Winterland here, and they were doing well. And that even then, it started to tail off. But that is the one thing that the artists, everybody controls. You don't have to sell through a record company. Right. You don't have to book a venue. Like once you've got the gig. You just have your high school buddy out there at the table. Just say, exactly.
Sits at the door,
yeah. So they're selling merch. So that was always just a cash cow. You didn't even report it. Like it was just great, straight money. Right. And then the part part of this equation that people didn't really do is selling things to film and TV. It used to be a sellout, and that just didn't happen. Yeah. That is completely acceptable now. Yeah.
All right, that's it for part 1. Charlie Recksieck, thank you for listening. We'll be back next time. This is the Something About Your podcast.